Sham Sharadava Nalalidaloka Tranaya Karuna Gana Ganatam Sham Sharadava Nalalidaloka Tranaya Karuna Gana Gana Praptasya Kalyana Gunanavasya Vande Guru Shri Charanaravindam Praptasya Vande Guru Shri Vande Guru Shri Charanaravindam Vande Guru Shri Charanaravindam Vande Guru Shri Charanaravindam Vande Guru Shri Mahaprabhu Kirtana Nitya Gita Vaditra Madhyam Manasurasena Romanchakam Pasru Taranga Baju Vande Guru Shri Charanaravindam Romanchakam Pasru Taranga Baju Shri Vigrara Dana Nityanana Shringaratanama Niramarjanado Juktasya Bhaktamsa Niyonjatopi Vande Guru Shri Charanaravindam Chaturvidha Shri Bhagavat Prasado Shattvanatriptan Hari Bhakta Sangam Chaturvidha Shri Bhagavat Prasado Shattvanatriptan Kridvaiva Tripte Bhajato Shadeva Vande Guru Shri Charanaravindam Shiradikama Dabayurapara Madhurya Leela Gunarupanamna Shiradikama Dabayurapara Madhurya Leela Gunarupanamna Pratikshana Danalalupasya Vande Guru Shri Charanaravindam Ne kunjayuno ratikeli sidhai Jayali bher joktir apekshaniya Ne kunjayuno ratikeli sidhai Jayali bher joktir apekshaniya Tatrati dakshar ativalavasya Vande Guru Shri Charanaravindam Sakcha Dhari Pena Shamasta Shashre Ruktastapthava Vyataeva Sadhavim Kintu Praborja Priyaeva Tasya Vande Guru Shri Charanarvindam Yasya Prasada Bhagavat Prasada Yasya Prasada Nagati Kutapi Yasya Prasada Yasya Prasada Dayam Stubam Tasya Yasatrin Sandhyam Vande Gurashi Charanaro Vrindam Vande Gurashi Charanara Vrindam Vande Gurashi Charanara Vrindam Nama Om Vishnu Padaya Krishna Prashtaya Bhutale Srimate Bhakti Vedanta Swami Niti Namine Nama Om Vishnu Padaya Krishna Prashtaya Namaste Sarasvate Deve Gauravani Pracharine Nirvishesha Shunyavadi Patsatari Shatarine Namaste Sarasvate Deve Gauravani Nirvishesha Shunavadi Patata Dishata Jaya Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhara Shivasari Gora Bhakta Brinda Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Jaya Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhara Shivasari Gora Bhakta Vrinda Jaya Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhara Shivasari Gaura Bhakta Vrinda Shri Krishna Chaitanya Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare, Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare, Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare, Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Krishna, oh, Hare Krishna, oh, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, oh, Hare Rama, oh, Rama Rama, Hare Hare, Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare, Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Haraye Nama, Krishna Jadavaye Nama, Jadavaye Madhavaya Keshavaya Nama, Gopal Govindaram Shumadu Sudam, Giridhari Gopina Madana Mohan, Shri Chaitanya Nityananda, Shri Adita Sita, Shri Adita, Hari Guru Vaishnava Bhagavata Gita, Shri Rupa Sanatan Bhatara Guna, Shri Jiva Gopala Bhatta Dasara Guna, Shri Jiva Gopala Bhatta. Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare, Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama. Nitai Gaura, Hari Bol, Hari Bol, Hari Bol, Nitai Gaura, Hari Bol, Nitai Gaura, Hari Bol, Hari Bol, Hari Bol, Nitai Gaura Pramanande, Hari Bol. Jai Vishnu Para Paramansa Prabhajaka Acharya, Astottara Sarasi Shimad, Divine Grace, Abhachara Vina Bhakti Viranta Swami Maharaj Shri Prabhupada की जय. ISKCON प्रतिष्ठा विधि संस्थापकाचार्य वैष्णव शिरोमणि पतित पावन श्री प्रभुपाद जी महाराज की जय. श्री गौरिया गुरु वर्ग पतित उद्धार की जय. श्री रूप सनातन भक्त रघुनाथ श्री जीव गोपाल भट्ट दास मनसत गोस्वामी प्रभु की जय. नामाचार्य श्री हरिदास ठाकुर जी की जय. अनंत कोटि वैष्णव वृंद की जय. प्रेम से कहो श्री कृष्ण चैतन्य प्रभु नित्यानंद श्री द्वैत गदाधर शिवासरि गौर भक्तवृंद की जय. जय परम दयाल श्री नित्यानंद प्रभु की जय. जय प्रेम नाम संकीर्तन एक जनाक प्रेम पुरुषोत्तम श्री सच्चिदानंद स्मरण गौरंग श्री चैतन्य महाप्रभु गौर हरि महावरनाय अवतार की जय. गोलोकेर परमधान हरि नाम संकीर्तन जगह की जय. जुग धर्म हरे कृष्ण महामंत्र की जय. बृहदांग ट्रांसनेंटल बुक डिस्ट्रीब्यूशन सेवा की जय. श्री राधा कृष्ण गोप गोपनाथ राधा कुंड श्याम कुंद गिरिराज गोवर्धन की जय. शिव जब वृंदावन मथुरा धाम की जय. तेलोशिव श्री राधा नील माधव की जय. श्री श्री माया पूर्णवती एक चक्रधाम की जय. परम करुण श्री गौर निताय की जय. श्री पुरुषोत्तम क्षेत्र जगन्नाथपुरी धाम की जय. श्री श्री जगन्नाथ स्वामी बलदेव प्रभु सुभद्रा देवी सुदर्शन चक्र भगवान की जय. गंगा माय जमुना माय की जय. तुलसी महारानी वृंद देवी भक्ति देवी की जय. श्री मथुरा रानी की जय. समवेत भक्त वृंद की जय. निताय गौर हरि परमानंद हरि बोल. All glories to the Assembly bodies. All glories to the Assembly bodies. All glories to the Assembly bodies. All glories, all glories, all glories to Shri Guru Shri Gauranga Hari.
Namaste Narasimhaya. Namaste Narasimhaya. Prahlada Ladadaine. Prahlada-ladadaine, Prahlada-ladadaine, Hiranyakashi purvakshaha, Hiranyakashi purvakshaha, Shilatankanakalaye, Shilatankanakalaye, Ito Narsimha Parato Narsimha, Ito Narsimha Parato Narsimha, Yato Yato Yami Tato Narsimha, Yato Yato Yami Tato Narsimha. बहिर्नृसिंह हृदये नृसिंह
बहिर्नृसिंह
हृदये नृसिंह नरसिंहमदिं शरणं प्रपते
नरसिंहमदिं शरणं प्रपदे
तव करकमलवरेण कामद्भुतशृङ्गां दलिताहिरण्यकशिपु तनुभृङ्गां केशवधृता नरहरे रूपा जय जगदीश हरे जय जगदीश हरे जय जगदीश हरे
तव कर कमल भरे नाखान
अद्भुत शृङ्गां दलिता हिरण्यकशिपु तनुभृङ्गां केशवधृता नरहरिरूपा जय जगदीश हरे जय जगदीश हरे जय जगदीश हरे केशवधृता नरहरि रूपा जय जगदीश हरे जय जगदीश हरे जय जगदीश हरे केशवधृता नरहरि रूपा जय जगदीश हरे जय जगदीश हरे जय जगदीश हरे जयो नरसिंह देव 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 जयो जयो नरसिंह देव जयो नरसिंह देव जयो प्रहलाद महाराज जयो प्रहलाद महाराज प्रहलाद महाराज जयो प्रहलाद महाराज
जय प्रहलाद महाराज जय प्रहलाद महाराज जय
प्रहलाद महाराज जयो प्रहलाद महाराज जयो जयो प्रभुपाद 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 जयो जयो प्रभुपाद जयो जयो प्रभुपाद 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 जयो जयो प्रभुपाद जयो जयो गुरुदेव 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 जयो जयो गुरुदेव
जय गुरुदेव 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 जय जय गुरुदेव
बोलो भक्त विघ्न विनाशक नरसिंहदेव भगवान की जय
जय
भक्त शिरोमणि प्रहलाद महाराज की जय शिला प्रभुपाद की जय निताई गौर प्रेमानंदे हरि हरि बोल
श्री वृंदाई तुलसी बाई पिया केशव सत्य विष्णु भक्ति प्रारे देवी सतवताय नमो नमः वृंदाई तुलसी बाई प्रिय केशव सत्य विष्णु भक्ति प्रारे देवी शतवताय नमो नमः वृंदाय तुलसी देवाय प्रिय केशव सत्य Vishnu Bhakti Prade Devi Satavataye Namo Namah. Shrimati Tulasi Maharani Vrinda Devi Ki Jai.
Namo Namaha Tulasi Krishna Preyasi Namo Namaha
Tulasi Krishna Preyasi Namo Namah.
Namo Namaha Tulasi Krishna Preyasi Namo Namaha
Tulasi Krishna Preyasi Namo Namah.
Radha Krishna Seva Pavo E Abhilashi
Radha Krishna Seva Pava Eya Vilasi.
Radha Krishna Seva Pavo E Abhilashi
Radha Krishna Seva Pava Eya Vilasi.
Je tomara sharan loy tara vancha purana hoy
Chetamar Sharanala Taravancha Purna.
kripa kori koro tare vrindavan basi
Tumi kripa kare karatare Vrindavanavasi.
Morae Abhilash Bilas Kunj Diyo Vas
Moraya Vilasa Kunje Yava.
Nayane Haribo Sada Jugal Ruparasi
Nayane Ribosada Jugala Ruparasi.
Ei Nivedana Dharo Sakhiranugatā Goro
Vedana Dhara Sakirayano Gatakara.
Sevadhikara diye Koro Nijadasi
Sevayade Karadiye Koroni Jadasi.
Dina Krishna Dase Koe Jina Mora Hoe
Na Krishna Das Koi Enamora.
Shri Radha Govinda Preme Sada Jina Bhasi
Shri Radha Govinda Preme Sadayena Vasi.
Shri Radha Govinda Preme Sada Jina Bhasi
Shri Radha Govinda सदाय नवसि
यानि कानि च पापानि ब्रह्माहत्यधिकानि च तानि तानि प्रनाशन्ति प्रदक्षिण पदे पदे
यानि कानि सा पापानि ब्रह्मचरिकानि सा तानि तानि प्रनाशन्ति प्रदक्षिण पदे पदे
यानि कानि च पापानि ब्रह्माहत्यधिकानि च तानि तानि प्रनाशन्ति प्रदक्षिणा पदे पदे
यानि कानि स पापानि ब्रह्मचरिकानि सा तानि तानि प्रनाशन्ति प्रदक्षिण पदे पदे
यानि कानि च पापानि ब्रह्माहत्यधिकानि च तानि तानि प्रनाशन्ति प्रदक्षिणा पदे पदे
यानि कानि स पापानि ब्रह्मचरिकानि सा तानि तानि प्रनाशन्ति प्रदक्षिण पदे पदे
हरे कृष्णा 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 हरे 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 राम 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 हरे हरे
Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare.
हरे कृष्णा 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 हरे 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 राम 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 हरे हरे
Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare.
जय तुलसी महारानी जय तुलसी महारानी जय तुलसी महारानी जय तुलसी महारानी
Jaya Tulsi Maharani, Jaya Tulsi Maharani, Jaya Tulsi Maharani, Jaya Tulsi Maharani.
जय वृंदा देवी जय वृंदा देवी जय वृंदा देवी जय वृंदा देवी
Jaya Vrinda Devi, Jaya Vrinda Devi, Jaya Vrinda Devi, Jaya Vrinda Devi.
नित्याय गौरा हरि बोल हरि बोल हरि बोल नित्याय गौरा हरि बोल नित्याय गौरा हरि बोल हरि बोल हरि बोल नित्याय गौरा हरि बोल श्रीमती तुलसी महारानी वृंदा देवी की जय
Jai Shri Vrindai Tulasi Devai Priyai Kesava Satya Vishnu Bhakti Prari Devi Shatavatai Namo Namaha. Vrindai Tulasi Devai Priyai Kesava Satya Vishnu Bhakti Prari Devi Shatavatai Namo Namaha. Vrindaye Tulasi Devai Priyaye Kesava Satya Vishnu Bhakti Prade Devi Satavataye Namo Namaha. Shrimati Tulasi Maharani Vrinda Devi ki jai. Tulasi, beloved Krishna, I bow before you again and again. My desire to obtain the service of Shri Radha and Krishna. We will take shelter of you as wishes fulfilled. Bestowing myself upon him, you make him resident of Vrindavan. My desire that you also give me a residence in pleasure groves of Shri Vrindavan Dham. Thus within my vision I will always behold the beautiful pastimes of Radha and Krishna. I beg you to make me a follower of Kavitams of Raj. Please give me the privilege of devotional service and make me your own maid servant. This very fallen and lowly servant Krishna praise. May I always stream in love Shri Shri Radha and Govind, Srimati Tulasi Maharani, Vrinda Devi ki jai. Shri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu Shri Krishna ki jai. Chaito Ratna Madhana Gagamada Shri Akari Vachantika Vidyavadu Devanam Anandam Udivardhanam Padipadam Purnamita Swadanam Sarvatmasnam Param Param Jyati Shri Krishna Sankirtan Namakarayutta Vida Sarva Shaktis Bhaktavitani Vita Smadena Kala Vidari Shri Bhakti Prasamati Durdhaivam Hidvishamya Nanuraga Chaitanya Mahaprabhu Shri Krishna ki jai. Namo Mahavarannaya Krishna Prema Pradayate Krishnaya Krishna Chaitanya Namani Guru Krishe. Glory to the Shri Krishna Sankirtana, which cleanses the heart with the dust accumulated for years and extinguishes the fire of conditional life for repeated birth and death. This Sankirtan moment is the prime benediction for humanity at large, because it spreads the rays of the benediction moment. It is the life of all transcendental knowledge. It increases the ocean of transcendental bliss and enables us to fully test the nectar for which we're always anxious. Oh my Lord, your holy name alone can bring the all benediction to living beings. And thus you have hundreds of millions of names like Krishna and Govinda. In these transcendental names you have invested all your transcendental energies. There's not even hardly fast for chanting these names. Oh my Lord, out of kindness, you enable us to easily approach by your holy name. But I'm so unfortunate that I have no attraction for them. Once you chant the holy name of the Lord in humble state of mind, thinking oneself the Lord in spirit and spirit, one should be more adorned than a tree, embodied of a sense of false prestige, and should be ready to offer all respect to others. In such state of mind, you can chant the holy name of the Lord constantly. O Almighty Lord, I have no desire to accumulate wealth, nor do I desire beautiful women, nor do I want any number of followers. I only want your cause of devotional service birth after birth. O son of Maharaj Nanda Krishna, I am your eternal servitor, yet somehow or other I am falling to the ocean of birth and death. Please bring me out from this ocean of death and place me as one of the atoms at your lotus feet. O my Lord, and will my eyes will be decorated with tears of love, flowing constantly when I chant your holy name. Will my voice choke up, and will the hairs of my body stand on end at the recitation of your name. Oh Govinda, feeling your separation, I am considering a moment to be like 12 years or more. Tears are flowing from my eyes like torrents rain, and I feel all vacant in the world in your absence. I know no one but Krishna as my Lord, and he should remain so, even if he handles me roughly by his embrace, or makes me broken-hearted by not being present before me. He is completely free to do anything and everything, for he is always my worshipful Lord unconditionally. Shri 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 Krishna Ki Jai. Namo Mahabharata Prema Pradayati Krishna Krishna Chaitanya Namne Gauri Krishna. There are 10 offenses in matter of chanting the holy name of the Lord that must be avoided. They are as follows. 1. To blaspheme, what is dedicated life for propagating the holy name of the Lord. 2. To consider the names of demigods and Lord Shiva and Lord Brahma to be equal to or independent of the name of Lord Vishnu. 3. To disobey the orders of the spiritual master. 4. To blaspheme the Vedic literature or literatures and pursuits of Vedic version. 5. To consider the glories of chanting Hare Krishna to be imagination. 6. To give some interpretation on the holy name of the Lord. 7. To commit simple activities on strength of chanting the holy name of the Lord. 8. To consider the chanting of Hare Krishna as one of the auspicious ritualistic activities which often Vedas as fruitive activity karma kanda. 9. To instruct the fearless person about the glories of the holy name. And 10. To not have complete faith in chanting the holy names and to maintain your attachments even after understanding so many instructions in this matter. It also an offense
to be inattentive while chanting. Every devotee who claims to be a Vaishnava must carefully guard against attentiveness in order to quickly achieve the desired success. Krishna Prema. Now let us offer our most humble obeisances to all Vaishnavas to the Lord. They are just like desire trees, they can fulfill the desires of everyone, and they are full of compassion for the fallen conditioned souls. Vanchakalpatarabhyascha kripa sindhubhyevacha patitanam pavanebhyo vaishnavebhyo namo namaha Vaishnava Thakur ki jai. Nama Om Vishnupadaya Krishna Prestaya Bhutali Srimati Bhakti Vedanta Swamini Tinamani Namaste Saraswati Devi Guruvani Pucharani Nirvisesa Sunyavali Paskati Dasatani Prabhupada Ki Jai. Om Namo Srimad Bhagavatam Grantaraja Ki Jai. Om Namo Bhagavatam. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya.
Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya.
Janmadyasya yato nivayad itaratas chartesva vikya swarat tene brahma hridaya adikavaye muyanti yatsurayaha tejo varimudam yata vinimayo yatra trisargo mesha damna srena sada nirasta kuhakam satyam param dhimahi. O my Lord, Shri Krishna, son of Vasudeva.
O my Lord, Shri Krishna, son of Vasudeva.
O all-pervading personality of Godhead.
O all-pervading personality of
I
God.
offer my respectful obeisances unto you.
I offer my respectful obeisance unto you.
I meditate upon Lord Shri Krishna because he is the absolute truth.
I meditate upon Lord Shri Krishna because he is the absolute
And the
truth.
primeval cause of all causes.
And the primeval cause of all causes.
Of the creation, sustenance, and destruction of the manifested universe.
Of the creation, sustenance, and destruction.
He is directly and indirectly conscious of all
He is
manifestations.
directly and indirectly conscious of all manifestations.
And he is independent because there is no other cause beyond him.
And he is independent because there is no other cause.
It is he
beyond
only who first imparted the Vedic knowledge unto the heart of Brahma.
him. It is he only first imparted the very knowledge unto
The
heart of
original
Brahma.
living
The
being.
original living
By him, even the great sages and demigods are placed into
being. By
illusion.
him, the great sage and demigods are placed
As
into
one is bewildered by the illusory
As
representations
one is bewildered by the illusion
of water seen on fire or land seen on water.
fire of land seen on
Only because of him did the material universe,
Only because of him do the material universe
temporarily manifested by the reactions of the three modes of nature,
temporarily manifested by the reaction
appear factual although they are unreal.
appear factual to the
I
unreal.
therefore meditate upon him, Lord Shri Krishna,
I therefore meditate upon
who is
him,
eternally existent in the transcendental abode,
who is eternally existent,
which is forever free from the illusory representations in the material
which
world.
is forever free from the illusory representation.
I meditate upon him, for he is the absolute
I
truth.
meditate upon him, for he is the absolute
Dharma projita kaitruvotra
Dharma Pujita Kaitu
paramo nirmatsaranam satam
Paramo Nirmasara
vedyam vastavam atra vastu
Vedam Vastavam Astro
shivadam tapatrayon
Shivadam Tapo
Shrimad Bhagavate Mahamani Krite
Srimad Bhagavate
Kim
Mahamani
Vaparir Ishwaraha
Kimva Parir
Sadyorhidi Avurudyatetra. Kriti Behi Sususubistakshana. Completely rejecting all material, completely rejecting all material activities which are materially motivated. Religious activities, material. This Bhagavata Purana propounds the highest truth, which is understandable by those devotees who are fully pure in heart. The highest truth is reality distinguished from illusion for the welfare of all. Such truth uproots the threefold mysteries. This beautiful Bhagavatam, compiled by the great sage Vyasadeva in his maturity, is sufficient in itself for God realization. What is the need of any other scripture? As soon as one attentively and submissively hears the message of Bhagavatam, by this culture of knowledge, the Supreme Lord is established within his heart. Nikama kalpatarur galitam phalam, sukhamukad amrita dravya samyatam, pibata bhagavatam rasam alayam, muhur aho raska bhuvibhavakaha. O expert and thoughtful man, relish Srimad Bhagavatam, the mature fruit of the desire to read Vedic literatures. It emanated from the lips of Sri Sukadeva Goswami. Therefore, this fruit has become even more tasteful. Although its nectarian juice was already relishable for all, including liberated souls. Shinvatam Swakata Krishna, Punya Shravana Kirtana, Hridayam Takstohi Badrani, Vidunoti Srihitsatam. To hear about Krishna from Vedic literatures, or to hear from him directly through the Bhagavad Gita, it's a self-righteous activity. And for one who hears about Krishna, Lord Krishna, who is dwelling in everyone's heart, acts as a best-wishing friend and purifies the devotee who constantly engages in hearing of him. Nastapresu bhadresu nityam bhagavata sevaya bhagavati utamasloke bhaktir bhavati naistaki. In this way, a devotee naturally develops his dormant transcendental knowledge. As he hears more about Krishna from the Bhagavatam and from the devotees, he becomes fixed in the devotional service of the Lord. Tadarajastamo bhava kamalobhadayaschaye cheta etaranavidam stitvam sattve prasidhati. By development of devotional service, one becomes freed from the modes of passion and ignorance. And thus material lust and avarice are diminished. Evam prasana manaso bhagavat bhakti yogataha bhagavat tattva vijnanam mukta sangasya jayate. When these impurities are wiped away, the candidate remains steady in his position of pure goodness, becomes enlivened by devotional service, and understands the science of God perfectly. Vidyate hridaya grantis chidyante sarvasamsaya siyante chashikarmani driste evatmanishvare. Thus Bhakti Yoga severs the hard knot of material affection and enables one to come at once to the stage of a samsayam samagram, understanding of the Supreme Absolute Truth Personality Godhead. Therefore, only by hearing from Krishna or from his devotee in Krishna consciousness can one understand the science of Krishna. Shri Guru Vastika Prayers Ki Jai. The spiritual master is receiving benediction from the ocean of mercy, just as a cloud pours water on a forest fire to extinguish it. So the spiritual master delivers the material afflicted world by extinguishing the blazing fire of material existence. For my respectful obeisance unto Lotus Feet is such a spiritual master, who is an ocean of auspicious qualities, chanting the holy name, dancing in ecstasy, singing and playing musical instruments. The spiritual master is always gladdened by the Sankirtan movement of Lord Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, because he is relishing the pleasures, because he is relishing the mellows of pure devotion within his mind. Sometimes his hair stands on end. He feels quivering in his body. and tears flow from his eyes like
and
waves.
tears flow from his eyes like
I offer my respectful obeisance unto the lotus feet of such a spiritual
my
master.
respectful obeisance to the lotus feet of such a spiritual
The
master.
spiritual master is always engaged in the temple worship of
The
Shri
spiritual
Radha
master
and
is also
Krishna.
engaged in the temple of Shri
He
Radha.
also engages his disciples in such worship.
He also engages disciples in such
They dress the deities in beautiful clothes and ornaments,
There is the deeds in beautiful clothes and
clean their
ornaments,
temple,
clean the temple,
and perform other similar worship of
and
the Lord.
perform other similar worship.
I offer my respectful obeisance unto the lotus feet of such a spiritual
I
master.
offer my respectful obeisance unto the lotus feet of such
The
a
spiritual master is always offering Krishna 4 kinds of delicious food.
The spiritual master is offering Krishna 4 kinds of delicious food,
Analyzed as that which is licked, chewed, drunk, and sucked.
and as that which is lictured, drunk, and
When the
sad.
spiritual master sees that the devotees are satisfied by eating Bhagavat Prasada,
When the spiritual master sees that the devotees are satisfied by eating
he
Bhagavat,
is satisfied.
he is
I offer my respectful obeisance unto the lotus feet of such a spiritual master.
I offer my respectful obeisance unto the lotus feet of such a
The
spiritual
spiritual master is always eager to hear and chant about the unlimited conjugal pastimes of Radhika and Madhava.
The spiritual master is always eager to hear and chant about the unlimited conjugal pastimes of Radhika
And their qualities, names, and
and the
forms.
qualities, names, and
The
forms.
spiritual master aspires to relish these at every moment.
The spiritual master aspires to relish these at
I
every
offer my
moment.
respectful obeisance unto the lotus feet of such a spiritual master.
I offer my respectful obeisance unto the lotus feet of such a
The spiritual master is very dear because he is expert at assisting the gopis who at different times make different tasteful arrangements for the perfection of Radha and Krishna's conjugal loving affairs within the groves of
The
Vrindavan.
spiritual master is very dear because he's expert in assisting the gopis who at different time make different tasteful arrangements for the perfection of Radha and Krishna conjugal loving affairs within the groves of
I
Vrindavan.
offer my most humble obeisance unto the lotus feet of such a spiritual
I
master.
offer my respectful obeisance unto the lotus feet of such a spiritual master.
The spiritual master is to be honored as much as the Supreme Lord because he's the most confidential servitor of the Lord.
The spiritual master is to be honored as much as the Supreme Lord because he's the most confidential servant of the Lord.
This is acknowledged by all revealed scriptures and followed by all authorities.
This is acknowledged in all the revealed scriptures and followed by all.
Therefore, I offer my respectful obeisance unto the lotus feet as such a spiritual master is a bona fide representative of Sri Hare Krishna.
Therefore, I offer my humble obeisance unto the Lord to such a spiritual master who is a bona fide representative of Sri Hare Krishna.
By the mercy of the spiritual master, one receives the benediction of
By
Krishna.
the mercy of the spiritual master, one receives the benediction of Krishna.
Without the grace of the spiritual master, one cannot make any advancement.
Without the grace of the spiritual master, one cannot make any advancement.
Therefore, I should always remember and praise the spiritual master.
If I should always remember and praise the spiritual
At
master.
least 3 times a day, I should offer my respectful obeisance unto the lotus feet of my spiritual master.
Every time there's a show for my respectful obeisance to the Lord to my spiritual master.
Shri Brahma Samhita ki jai, Ishvara Parama Krishna Satchitananda Vigraha Anadiraja Govinda Sarva Karana Karanam.
Ishvara Parama Krishna Sakchidananda Vigraha Anadiradi Govinda Sarvakarana
Chintamani Prakara Sadma Sukalpa Vriksha
Chintamani Prakara Sadma Sukalpa
Laksha Vrite Susurabhira Vipaliyantam
Laksha Vitesya Suravira Vipalaya
Lakshmi Sahasra Sata Sambrahma Sevyamanam
Lakshmi Sahasra Satasambrahma Seva
Govindam Adi Purisham Tamaham Bhajami
Govindam Adi Purusham Tamaham
Venam Kvanantam Aravinda Dalayataksam
Venum Kwamantam Aravinda Dayavata
Arhavatam Samasitam Buddha Sundarangam
Aram Vatassamasitam Buddha Sundaranga
Pandar Putkoti Kamaniya Visesa Sobam
Dharmakoti Kamaniya Vishesha
Govindam Adi Purisham Tamaham Bhajami
Govindam Adi Purusham Tamaham
Alola Chandra Kala Sadvanamarya Vamsi
Alola Chandra Kala Sadvanamalya
Ratnangidam Pranayakeli Kalavilasam
Ratnangadam Pranayakeli Kalavilasam
Shyamam Chibanga Lalitani Taprakasam
Yamam Tribhangalalitam Niyata
Govindam Adi Purisham Tamaham Bhajami
Govindam Adi Purusham Tamaham
Angani Yasya Sakalendriya Vrittimanti
Angani Yasha Sakalendriya Vrittimanti
Pasyanti Panti Kalayanti Chiram Jaganti
Pasyanti Panti Kalayanti Chiram Jaganti
Ananda Chinmaya Sadujvala Vigrahasya
Ananda Chinmaya Sadujvala Vigraha
Govindam Adi Purisham Tamaham Bhajami
Govindam Adi Purusham Tamaham
Advaitam Achyutam Anadim Anantarupam
Adaitam Achyutam Anadim Anantarupam
Adyam Purana Purusham Navayovanam Sha
Adyam Purana Purusham Navajauvanam
Vede Sudurlabam Adurlabam Atma Bhakto
Vedeshu Durlabham Adurlabham
Govindam Adipurisham Tamaham Bhajami. Fantastakoti Satavatsara Sampragamyo. Vayoratapi Manasomani Pungamanam. So Pyastiyat Prapadasim Yavichintya Tatve. Govindam Adipurisham Tamaham Bhajami. Ekopya Sora Chaitam Jagadanda Kotim. Yes Chaktirasti Jagadanda Chaya Yadanta. Andantarasta Paramanu Chayantarastam. Govindam Adipurisham Tamaham Bhajami. Yad Bhava Bhavita Diyo Manajasta Taiva. Samprapya Rupa Mahima Sanayana Bhusaha. Suktaryameva Nigama Pratitaistuvanti. Govindam Adipurisham Tamaham Bhajami. Ananda Chinmaya Rasa Pratibhavitabis. Tabirya Eva Nijarupa Taya Kalabi. O Loka Eva Nivasata Kilatma Bhuto. Govindam Adipurisham Tamaham Bhajami. Premanjana Churita Bhakti Vilochanena. Santak Sadaiva Hidayesu Vilokayanti. Yam Shama Sundaram Achintya Gunaswarupam. Govindam Adipurisham Tamaham Bhajami. Ramadi Murti Sukalani Amenatistan. Nana Avatara Makarod Bhuvanesa Kintu. Krishna Swayam Samabhavat Paramam Pumam Yo. Govindam Adipurisham Tamaham Bhajami. Yasya Prabha Prabhavato Jagananda Koti. Kotis Vasesu Vasudadi Vibhuti Binam. Tad Brahma Niskalam Anantam Asesa Bhutam. Govindam Adipurisham Tamaham Bhajami. Maya Hiyasya Jagadanda Satani Sute. Trigunya Tad Vishayaveda Vitayamanam. Sattva Valambi Parasattvam Visuddha Sattvam. Govindam Adipurisham Tamaham Bhajami. Ananda Chinmaya Rasatmataya Manasu. Ya Praninam Pratifalam Smaratam Upetya. Vilayatena Bhuvanani Jaya Jasram. Govindam Adipurisham Tamaham Bhajami. Golokanamni Nitidamni Talechatasya. Devi Mahesa Haridama Sute Sutesu. Te Te Prabhava Nichayar Vitaschayena. Govindam Adipurisham Tamaham Bhajami. Shististate Pralaya Sadhava Saktireka. Chayeva Yasya Bhuvanani Vivarti Durga. Ichchana Rupam Apyasya Chachesta Tesa. Govindam Adipurisham Tamaham Bhajami. Shiram Yata Dadivikara Vishesha Yoga. Sanjayate Nahitata Pritakasti Hetoho. Yasambhutam Apitata Samupaitikar. Govindam Adipurisham Tamaham Bhajami. Dipachir eva hita santaramabhyupetya. Dipayate vivita hetu samanudharma. Yastadrigeva hicha Vishnu taya vibhati. Govinda Madi Purisham Tamaham Bhajami. Ya Karna Narna Vajale Bhajati Sma Yoga. Nidram Ananta Jagadanda Saroma Kubaha. Adhara Shaktim Avalambya Param Swamurtim. Govinda Madi Purisham Tamaham Bhajami. Yasyaika Nishvasita Kalamatavalamya. Jivanti Loma Vilaja Jagadandanataha. Vishnur Mahansahi Yasya Kala Vishesho. Govinda Madi Purusham Tamaham Bhajami. Vishesho Vasvanya Tasma Sakalesu Nijesu Teja. Sviyam Kiyat Prakatayat Apitadvadatra. Brahmaya Esa Jagadanda Vidana Karta. Govinda Madi Purisham Tamaham Bhajami. Yat Pada Palava Yugam Vinidaya Kumbha. Twande Pranama Samayesa Ganadi Rajaha. Samayesa. Vignam Vihantam Alamasya Jagatrayasya. Govinda Madi Purisham Tamaham Bhajami. Agnir Mahi Gaganam Ambu Marudisascha. Kalastatatma Manasiti Jagatrayani. Yasmad Bhavanti Vibhavanti Vishanti Yamcha. Govinda Madi Purisham Tamaham Bhajami. Yachaksuresa Savita Sakala Grahanam. Raja Samasta Suramurti Rasesa Tejaha. Yasya Graya Brahmati Sambrita Kala Chakro. Govinda Madi Purisham Tamaham Bhajami. Dharmo Tapapa Nichaya Srutayastapamsi. Brahmadi Kita Patakava Dayascha Jivaha. Yadata Matra Vibhava Prakata Prabhava. Govinda Madi Purusham Tamaham Bhajami. Yastrindra Gopa Matavindra Mahoswakarma. Bandhana Rupa Falabhajana Matanoti. Karmani Nirdahati Kintu Chapakti Bhajam. Govinda Madi Purusham Tamaham Bhajami. Yam Krodha Kama Sahaja Pranayadi Bitti. Vatsalya Moha Guru Gaurava Sevya Bhavahai. Sanchintya Tasya Sadrisim Tanamapurete. Govinda Madi Purusham Tamaham Bhajami. Shriya Kanta Kanta Paramo Purusha Kalpataravo. Druma Bhumishchintamani Ganamayi Amritam. Kata Ganam Natyam Gamanam Apivam Sipriya Saki. Chidadandam Jyoti Param Apitad Asvadyam Apicha. Sayatra Shiradi Bihi Shravati Surabhibhyascha Sumahan. Nime Sardakyo Vavrajati Nahiyatrapi Samaya. Bhaje Sveta Dvipam Tamaham Iha Golakamitiyam Vitantaste Santakshiti Viralachara Katipaye Shrimad Bhagavatam, Canto 2, Chapter 6, verse number 29. Tataste Bhratara Ime Prajanam Patayo Nava Ayajan Vyaktam Avyaktam Purusham Susamahita. Translation by Srila Prabhupada. My dear son, thereafter your 9 brothers, who are the masters of living creatures, perform the sacrifice with proper rituals to satisfy both the manifested and non-manifested personalities. Purport by His Divine Grace, A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami Srila Prabhupada. The manifested personalities are the demigods, like the ruler of the heavenly kingdom, Indra, and his associates. And the non-manifested personality is the Lord Himself. The manifested personalities are mundane controllers of the material affairs, whereas the non-manifested personality of Godhead is transcendental, beyond the range of the material atmosphere. In this age of Kali, the manifested demigods are also not to be seen, for space travel has completely stopped. So, both the powerful demigods and the supreme personality of Godhead are manifested to the covered eyes of the modern man. Modern men want to see everything with their eyes, although they are not sufficiently qualified. Consequently, they disbelieve in the existence of the demigods or of the Supreme Lord. They should see through the pages of authentic scriptures and should not simply believe their unqualified eyes. Even in these days, God can also be seen by qualified eyes, tinged with the ointment of love of God. Srila Prabhupada Ki Jai. My dear son, he's referring, this is Brahma speaking, he's referring to Narada. Thereafter your 9 brothers, these are demigods, who are the masters of living creatures, perform the sacrifice with proper rituals to satisfy both the manifested and non-manifested personalities. Jai Srila Prabhupada. So this is the chapter called Purusha Sukta Confirmed. And most of it is Lord Brahma speaking, or all of it is Lord Brahma speaking to Narada and explaining the real facts about the creation and how it's taken place. And this is necessary for the devotee to understand. Otherwise, easily the devotee will be misled by all the phony explanations made by the scientists and philosophers and so-called teachers and things like that. Because there are many people in this age that are speculators. They're just making things up, but using language that confuses people, and therefore people just surrender to them, thinking they know what they're talking about, where in reality they don't know anything. Almost everything they're saying is false. So, therefore, what's the solution? The solution is Jnana Chaksus, or Shastra Chaksus. This is explained 13th chapter, 35th verse of Bhagavad Gita, where it says, Chitra Chitra Gayor Evam Antaram Jnana Chaksusa Bhuta Prakriti Moksham Cha Ye Vidur Yanti Te Param. This verse says, those who see with eyes of knowledge the difference between the body and the knower of the body, and can also understand the process of liberation from bondage and material nature, attain to the supreme goal. And in the purport, Prabhupada says, the purport of this 13th chapter is that one should know the distinction between the body and the owner of the body and the supersoul. Right there, that eliminates almost 99% of the population of the world. 99% of the population of the world does not really understand the distinction between the body and the owner of the body and the supersoul. And they don't have any genuine idea, or most, not all of the 99%, but most of them, don't have a genuine idea of how to recognize the process of liberation, which were explained in this chapter 13 in verses 8 to 12. So the 8 to 12 explains the process of knowledge by which we can be liberated from the cycle of birth and death. And it begins with amanitvam, humility. Then one can proceed, as it says, to the supreme destination, going back to Godhead. And being liberated even in this world and after death, going back to Godhead. A faithful person should at first have some good association to hear of God, and thus gradually become enlightened. If one accepts a spiritual master, one can learn to distinguish between matter and spirit. And that becomes the stepping stone for further spiritual realization. In other words, if a person doesn't understand the difference between the body and the soul, they can't make any spiritual advancement. They might study things, they might speak things, they might pass tests, they might write books, but actually they don't understand anything. Because, and for example, you take the Pope. The Pope is eating meat. He believes that the body and soul are connected. Therefore, when a person dies in Christianity, they bury the body, even though it's decomposing, so that they believe that there's some second coming of Christ, and he'll resurrect all the dead bodies and make them whole again, and then judge everyone, whether they should go to heaven or go to hell. So they have a bodily concept of the soul. They think, and that's not only the Christians, it's also the Jews, and it's also the Muslims. They attribute great importance to cemeteries, where the bodies of dead people are buried. And they often go to those cemeteries and pray for the dead people. In fact, who is that? Is it Jehovah's Witnesses, I think, or no? It's the Mormons. They go to cemeteries where there are dead Christians, and they pray that those dead people go to heaven. And the Christians themselves get really upset about this, because the Christians do not consider the Mormons to be actually Christians. But this is what the Mormons do. And the whole thing is based on the body. And it's saying here that a faithful person should at first have some good association to hear of God, and thus gradually become enlightened. If one accepts a spiritual master, one can learn to distinguish between matter and spirit, and that becomes the stepping stone for further spiritual realization. A spiritual master, by various instructions, teaches his students to get free from the material concept of life. For instance, in Bhagavad Gita, we find Krishna instructing Arjuna to free him from materialistic considerations. Well, the Abrahamic religions, Judaism, Christianity, and Muslim, the material body and understanding of a soul are intertwined. They're not separate. Therefore, there's a bodily concept of the soul. That's why they have cemeteries. So, how far can they go in spiritual life? Not very far. They always remain missing the actual goal and coming to lower states, such as elevation to the higher material planets through the mode of goodness, but not going through the coverings of the material of this universe, material universe, and actually going back to Godhead. then Prabhupada says, one can understand that this body is matter. It can be analyzed with its 24 elements, right? So you have 5 great elements: earth, water, fire, air, ether. You have 5, and they have mind, intelligence, and false ego. And then you have 5 senses. And then you have 5 objects of the senses, right? And then you have the 5 working senses, right? So that's 23. And then you have the Mahat Tattva, the entire material creation. So these are the 24 elements of the body. And then you have other things. Now, then you have what's called the symptoms of life, which are interactions of the gross and subtle, the interactions that are gross and subtle. The gross interactions are desire, hatred, happiness, and distrust. And the subtle reactions those 4 things represent the 5 great elements: earth, water, fire, air, and ether. And the subtle reactions are consciousness and convictions, and they're manifestations of the subtle body. So this gives a general outline of the material body and its interactions, and which are gross and subtle. So without understanding this, one doesn't really understand how they're situated. And then oftentimes it says that everything we see is a combination of matter and spirit. Actually, Prabhupada qualifies that in a letter he wrote to in February 5th, 1970. He says, "The soul is different than the body. It is not exactly a combination, but it is engagement." So oftentimes Prabhupada says there's a combination of soul and body, but he refined that understanding in this letter of February 5th, 1970, to a person named Anil Grover. And he said it's not exactly a combination, because the soul cannot combine with matter. They're 2 different things. It's like water and oil. They don't really combine. But they sort of coexist and mix somewhat. But there's always going to be a separation of oil and water, and unless you put some kind of a surfactant, and then they combine. But as far as the soul and matter, they never combine. The matter cannot combine chemically to the soul. But they look as if they're combined. But actually, Prabhupada says that it is not exactly a combination, but it is an engagement. The body encages the soul only because the soul becomes bewildered and identifies falsely with the body. And therefore, whatever happens to the body at that point affects the soul, or it seems to affect the soul. But actually, it's all taking place on the level of the false ego. Just like if I have a toothache, I can point to it. Yes, this second molar over here. It really hurts. But if someone insults me, I also say, that hurt me. But if someone asks, well, where did it hurt you exactly? They say, well, right over here. So the doctor looks over here. He says, nothing there. It's perfectly functioning. So, well, then it has to be over here. And the doctor looks there and says, no, your heart's perfectly fine. So where did it get hurt? Where's the hurt? It's in the false ego. It's not in the body. It's in the false ego. And the false ego is something false, right? It's something false because one is never the material body. One is always the spirit soul. But people get confused by associating with something. Just like if you give a cigarette to a child, let's say it's a 3-year-old child, says, inhale. The child inhales, starts coughing, and face turns red, and then the father says, well, take another puff. No, I don't want it anymore, But by associating with nonsense people, eventually the child learns how to smoke cigarettes. And now they're proud about inhaling and filling their lungs with all that contaminated poison of nicotine and smoke and particles. And eventually, if you've ever seen, let's look it up now on the internet. Look up a picture of the lungs of a man who has cancer from smoking. Look it up. Let's take a look at what the lungs look like when you smoke a lot. It's very interesting to see it. They're black. Whereas when they're healthy, they're somewhat reddish, they look clean, but after smoking for 20, 30, 40 years, how does it look? Describe it. Is it blackish?
Yeah, red and blackish.
Red and black.
Red means good and the black.
Oh, yeah, they're comparing a good one to a bad. Yeah. That's what happens when you smoke. Your lungs become contaminated and black when they should be reddish. See? People are so dumb. They're crazy. Absolutely crazy. You're not meant to put smoke into your lungs. You're supposed to have air, and then the lungs can separate the oxygen from the nitrogen. But people are crazy, and it starts when they're kids. There's pictures of 3-year-old kid who's a chain smoker, and they're proud about inhaling all that smoke, and they blow it out, and they make little circles sometimes, right? They're proud of that. They're the dumbest people in the world, But if you explain something to them, they don't. They think you're a fool. You don't know what's good, like smoking. I've told this story before. I had my sister-in-law, a lady who was married to my brother. She was a chain smoker, right? So when she got to be about 55, 60, she got what's called emphysema. Look that up. Emphysema. Emphesema. Emphysema. Emphysema. What's it say?
One of the diseases that comprises COPD, chronic obstructive pulmonary disease.
Okay, pulmonary means the lungs. Chronic obstruction, right?
Yeah, obstructive pulmonary.
Okay, does it say how it happens?
It develops over time and involves the gradual damage of lung tissue, specifically the reduction in the lung surface area traps air in the damaged tissue and prevents oxygen from moving through the bloodstream.
Does it say it's caused by smoking? Anyway, it's caused by smoking mostly. If you live next to a volcano that's erupting, you could also get it by inhaling those poisonous gases.
Another article, it says smoking the main cause.
Yeah, smoking is the main cause, right?
Multiple, but
Yeah. So my sister-in-law had emphysema. And for the rest of her life, I think she died when she was like 70-some years old, right? From the time she's 60 to the time she's 72, she had to have this. This was a long time ago. So, sometimes you see people walking down the street. They have these plastic tubes going into their nose, right? Well, at that time they had that, but it had to be connected to this big, heavy oxygen tank. So everywhere she went, even in the house, she had to have this big oxygen tank next to her, and it's connected to her nose, right? Otherwise, she would die. She couldn't breathe properly, right? Because her lungs were so destroyed by smoking. So, if you, Arush, you ever see any kids at school that smoke? No? Oh, okay. Well, you're lucky. That way you won't die of secondhand smoke. No, there are kids, sometimes in middle school and often, many times in high school, they're smoking. And they think it's really cool. So one time I asked my sister-in-law, I said, Mary, what got you started smoking? And she said, oh, well, when I was a young girl in the 1940s, I went to the movies, and I saw Clark Gable smoking a cigarette. Or I think it was Clark Gable or Humphrey Bogart. And those were big movie stars in the 1940s and 50s. And she said, it looks so cool that I started smoking. Right? So fast forward 1940s to 1970s and 80s, right? She ruined her lungs. And then for the last, I think, 15 years of her life, she had this big, heavy oxygen tank always next to her. Sometimes she had to get someone else to pull it for her. And it's connected with these wires going into her nose. Yeah, these people are crazy, right? But if you tell them something, they get angry at you. Oh, you don't know what you're talking about. Yeah. So, therefore, what's the solution to all this? The solution is Jnana Chaksus, or Shastra Chaksus. And that's what Prabhupada says. He says that the defect of modern men, of modern people, right? He says, modern men want to see everything with their eyes, although they are not sufficiently qualified. But there are many things that your eye cannot see. Your eye does not see electromagnetic waves, which are present right now going. That's why your cell phone is working. There's electromagnetic waves going through this building right now, right? Going through our body also. And you have the cell phone tower right outside here, right across the street. There's a big cell phone tower. That's why you're picking up these waves, right? So you don't see them, but they're here, and they're carrying information. They're carrying pictures. They're carrying people that speak, and sound, and so many things are being carried by these waves and communicated to us from far away. So there are many things we don't see. So the scientists say, well, we don't believe anything we can't see. Well, that means that you at least 3/4 of a reality they don't see. At least, maybe more. So what good is their science? It's not that good. And as far as spiritual science goes, zero, null, nada, nothing. They don't understand anything. Even the Catholic Church and the Pope, who's supposed to be direct representative of God, they're representing God as an old man with wrinkles. You go to the Sistine Chapel in the Vatican, and you'll see God's depiction. He's an old man. Right? And that's wrong. It's not a fact. God is not subject to decay, old age, disease, any of those things. He doesn't have wrinkles. He's always a pristine youth, Nabiyovanam Shah, as it says in Brahma Samhita. So how are we going to learn what the truth is? Only, as Prabhupada says, consequently, they believe in the existence of the demigods or of the supreme God. Then he says, they should see through the pages of authentic scriptures and should not simply believe their unqualified eyes. Even in these days, God can also be seen by qualified eyes tinged with the ointment of love of God. So it is possible to see God even today. Actually, we see him every day, right? We see Krishna's, Radha and Krishna every day, Jagannath Subhadra Baladev and Gaur Nitai and Lord Ramachandra, Sita Ram. And actually, we will actually not only see the deity, but we'll actually see the deity speak and walk and talk. Eventually, if we have pure love for the Lord. Just like the Brahmin boy who took the old man to Vrindavan to see the Gopal deity, and then they came back, and the old man said, you have to marry my daughter. But when they came back, when the old man told his wife and sons that he wanted his daughter to be married to the poor Brahmin boy, they refused. They said, no way. The guy's poor. He's a nobody. Our sister is a somebody. And then the father realized that he couldn't convince them, and he became very, very upset internally, but he didn't show it. He just remained silent. Sometimes when people remain completely silent, it's a sign that there's turmoil going on in their mind, and they're not able to speak, or they're afraid to speak. And then the boy said, now look, your father promised me, right in front of the deities. You may not understand this, but if you make a promise in front of the deities and don't keep it, it's extremely severe karmic reaction. And the son said, you don't know what you're talking about. You're just a freeloader trying to marry our daughter because she has money. You forced my dad to promise you this. You know, he didn't want to do it. He doesn't believe in you as a credible person. So the boy said, well, look, I'm going to go and I'll bring the deity here, and the deity can speak to you just like he spoke to me, and he'll prove that I'm not lying. They said, okay, well, if you can do that, sonny boy, we'll believe you. And they were convinced that it's impossible. So the boy goes all the way back, treks all the way back to Vrindavan, and asks the deity to please come with him. And the deity speaks to him and says, "What? How do you know I can walk all the way to?" He said, "Well, if you can talk, you can walk, right?" So then the deity said, "Okay, but one condition: you lead the way, but never look behind you. Never look at me." And the boy said, "Yes, yes, I promise you." So they walked back almost to the village, but the boy was so anxious that right before they came to the village, he turned around to look at the deity, because he heard the deity walking behind him the whole distance. I think it's like 2,000 miles. And then the deity stopped on the outskirts of the village. So the boy runs into the village and says, "Look, the deity came to attest that I did not lie." They said, "What do you mean the deity came?" Because they knew it was a very heavy rock deity. They said, "You come and look." So they went, and there was the deity, Gopal, from Vrindavan. And then they understood that somehow or other this boy did this miracle. He obviously could not lift the deity. He couldn't walk all that distance with the deity. There was no trucks and things like that to carry a deity. Even it would be virtually impossible to put him on a cart, a bullock cart, and walk that whole distance. So he proved that the deity is not a piece of rock. It's actually a person. But those people who don't have faith, they never see it. Just like if someone tells you there are electromagnetic waves going through this room, so I don't believe it because I don't see it. Does that mean they don't exist? They have to exist. Your cell phone works, the radio works, the television works. Okay? So obviously there are these things that are unseen. So we have to see through the scriptures. So that's the whole idea of Jnana Chakshus. That's this verse 1335, where it says that those who see with the eyes of knowledge, what is that? Jnana Chaksusa. Chaksusa means eyes or sight or vision. And Jnana means the knowledge that differentiates between the body and the soul. And that's the beginning of spiritual life. And then in the previous verse to that, text 34, it says that as the sun alone illuminates all this universe, so does the living entity, one with the body, illuminate the entire body by consciousness. So Prabhupada says in the purport, there are various theories regarding consciousness. Here in Bhagavad Gita, the example of the sun and the sunshine is given. As the sun is situated in one place, but is illuminating the whole universe, so a small particle of a spirit soul, although situated in the heart of this body, is illuminating the whole body by consciousness. Thus, consciousness is a proof of the presence of the soul, as sunshine or light is the proof of the presence of the sun. When the soul is present in the body, there is consciousness all over the body. And as soon as the soul has passed from the body, there's no more consciousness. This can be easily understood by any intelligent man. Therefore, consciousness is not a product of the combinations of matter. It is the symptom of the living entity, or the soul. The consciousness of the living entity, although qualitatively one with the supreme consciousness, is not supreme, because the consciousness of one particular body does not share that of another body. But the supersoul, which is situated in all bodies as the friend of the individual soul, is conscious of all bodies. That is the difference between the supreme consciousness and the individual consciousness. So, Prabhupada often refers to the sun as an example. Here is using it as example of emanating energy. The sun is emanating energy in the form of heat and light, but yet it stays virtually stationary 93 million miles away from the Earth, or so-called 93 million miles. So, in the same way, the soul is situated in the heart, but yet it fills the whole body with consciousness. And when someone dies and the soul leaves the body, it's not conscious anymore. Okay. So therefore, to understand these things, we must hear the scriptures. We must learn through the scriptures, not through the phony science books. The science people only believe what they see, or what they can see. So, for example, they've never seen an atom, but yet they hypothesize that there is an atom with some kind of a structure. And then they draw pictures of it. So you can look up on the internet, look up the structure of the atom. So they have a whole picture of it, or they've drawn. They've never seen it, but they draw a picture. Now, how do they know what the atom looks like? Well, they can surmise, or they can speculate based on observations of what? Of reactions. Yeah, what do they say? Round thing with a nucleus and then neutron. Yeah, protons and electrons and neutrons, and so, or in other words, what they call atomic particles. And they surmise that there's this like that, but they've never seen it. So how do they know? Well, they do experiments where they bombard atoms with other things, and then they see these little streaks of line of smoke or something like that. And then they sort of make, they have the idea of the universe where the planets are going around the sun. So Neil Bohr's, you look him up, B-O-H-R-S. He was the first one who hypothesized that there must be a nucleus and electrons going around the nucleus and protons. So what does it say? B-O-H-R-S, Bohr's. He's a Norwegian or Scandinavian person who was a physicist and mathematician. Yeah. What's it say? Look him up on Wikipedia. He's a physicist.
Who made foundational contributions to understanding atomic structure.
See? Atomic structure. Okay, go ahead, keep reading.
And quantum theory, for which he received the Nobel Prize in Physics in 1922. Bohr was also philosopher and promoter of scientific research.
They should spell it philosopher. Philosopher. But he was a smart guy. He was not dumb. He's a smart man, definitely. Okay. Say anything? Does it say anything else interesting?
Bohr developed the Bohr model of atom,
He calls it after himself, the Bohr model.
in which he proposed that energy levels of electrons are discrete and that electrons revolve in stable orbits around the atomic nucleus, around the atomic nucleus.
How does he know that? He, what was the word he used? He developed.
Bohr's model.
Yeah, he developed his model. That's buzzword for speculated. But speculated means he made some intelligent guesses, right? That have been accepted for so many years. It was in 1922. He got so he was recognized in 1922 with the Nobel Prize. But later on, people realized that it might not be like that. And then they came up with other theories, the string theory and the wave theory, this thing, that thing, because they'd never seen it. They're just, it's hypothesized based on some observations that he made and his own fertile imagination. Okay. You see how it works? Is this science? That's not really science. How can he say he's absolutely sure it's like this? He can't be absolutely sure because he's never seen it. He's hypothesized it. Yeah. You see. So we have to depend on Shastra. That's the lesson today. If we want to know what reality is about the universe, about this or that, we have to depend on Shastra. And Shastra means Bhagavad Gita and Srimad Bhagavatam. Otherwise, you're in uncharted areas like Neil Bohr's and Einstein and this one and that one, and it's never going to be perfect. Okay. Are there any questions? You see, what are we pointing out here? We're pointing out all the defects of modern men and their speculations. And unless we understand that, we become fooled. And we start believing them and not believing the scriptures. You see. And when you get fooled, just like my sister-in-law was fooled. She saw this movie star on a big screen in the movies smoking a cigarette, and she thought, oh, that's so cool. Little did she know that the cigarette companies paid Humphrey Bogart to smoke. Did you know that? They actually paid him to smoke, purposely smoke. And by the way, he died of lung cancer also. Right?
Product placement.
Yeah. And by the way, the cigarette companies, they were sued by the federal government because they purposely put addictive chemicals into the tobacco. Tobacco is already a narcotic, right? But they put highly addictive chemicals in the tobacco so that when they smoke, people become hooked on smoking and cannot live without it. And they had to pay hundreds and billions of dollars. But the government didn't stop them. As long as they paid them money, the governments, they are the biggest extortionists in the world. You want to look at where the extortion, EXTROTION, extortion, EXTOR.
Practice of obtaining something, especially money.
Yeah,
Force or threat.
yeah. And how do they do it? They come up to a gun to put in there. Give me your money. That's what the IRS and the federal government does. They put a gun up to the cigarette people. Okay, you made enough money. Now give us some of that money. Right. So they're extortionists. Yeah, all these words. They have these good words in English, to describe everything. I don't know if you have a word like that. You must have a word like that in Hindi also, or Telugu. Extortion.
Jabardasti vasool.
Huh?
Jabardasti. Jabardasti vasool. Jabardasti means forcefully taking the something.
Yeah, that's what it is. It's extortion. That's what the government has put the gun up there. Give us your money, cigarette companies, you know. And they did. They gave hundreds and billions of dollars, but they still made money. Right? They made money since the 1920s, right up to when they got sued and they lost the cases. It was the 1980s, 90s. Okay. All glories to Srila Prabhupada. Yes.
Maharaj, we skipped that 28, I think. Maybe
28 what?
the verse yesterday we did 27, today we did 29. 28,
I thought I read it yesterday. I actually.
yesterday was 27.
Yeah. Okay. Well, we can do it again. Yeah. Now I did find what I promised to read to you. Okay. So. This is the quote by Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati Thakur. Kirtana is called Sankirtana when many people perform it together. But will it be worthy of the name Sankirtana if some worthless people, without any ardor for Sri Bhagavan's service, and the ardor means without any enthusiasm to engage in devotional service, come together to shout in unison? It will be true, Hari Sankirtan, when we join the Sankirtana of true devotees who are serving Sri Bhagavan according to the principles established in the Vedas and allied Shastras. Contrastingly, it is not Hari Sankirtana when it is conducted for the prevention of the epidemics of cholera or smallpox, for prosperity in trade, for gain or for respect and fame. This kirtana is Maya kirtana, chanting within the jurisdiction of the illusory potency. Srila Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati Thakur. Got it? He says, it is not Hari Sankirtana when it is conducted for the prevention of the epidemics of cholera or smallpox. Because before their corona was cholera or smallpox in India, right? Many people walk around with all these wounds on their face, because they had smallpox. Yeah. For prosperity in trade, Krishna or Balaji, please let my business do better, right? For gain or for respect and fame. This kirtan is Maya kirtana, chanting within the jurisdiction of the illusory potency. There it is. Now the only question now is the one that what's his name? Damodar Hari. Yeah. He said, "Well, what is it? What do you mean? Like sometimes we're praying for Guru Dev to get better or not to die? I mean, is that also Maya Kirtan?" Well, that's a very strong emotional question, right? But the fact is that the soul is eternal. He's not going to die. He's just going to change his body, just like every one of us is going to change our body. And we don't know what the background of it is. We do know one thing, that there's another very important quote that will reveal something. I'll read that tomorrow. That'll justify what I said, even in the case of praying for the Guru. I mean, you can always pray for the welfare of the Guru, but to actually chant so many Hare Krishnas so that the Guru doesn't die, it's actually a material thing. But I'll read another quote tomorrow that'll make that even clearer. Haribol. All glories to Srila Prabhupada. So I can send you this quote if you want. Okay. So, all right, you can send it. Now it doesn't say where in Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati's either conversations or books he made that statement. That's something I still have to find out. It just says Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati Thakur. You send it? Okay. You can share it.
From this quote, the context,
Huh?
from this quote, the context is given that chicken pox is one of the healing thing, right? So
Yeah, well,
that's what
previously there was no COVID. It was chicken pox, or not chicken pox. It was smallpox. There's a difference between chicken pox and smallpox. Smallpox definitely leaves, scars on your face. You see a lot of Indians walking around with those scars, is it not? Because they had smallpox. And cholera. Cholera was another it was a deadly disease. Okay, Haribol. What time are they coming?
We'll be here 10 o'clock, but we'll start 10:30.
Yeah, okay.
And
So you set
Radhapati
it
will
up.
come. Yeah, Radhapati will come and help you.
Who?
Radhapati
Okay,
will come and put the.
okay, okay.
Thank you.
You can give it to me. Shri Guru Charana Padma Kevala Bhakati Satma Vanomui Sahabadana Mate Janara Prasadeva E Bhavatoriya Jai Krishna Pravdi Oya Hoite Guru Mukha Padma Vaikya Chittete Koriya Kya Arana Koriya Mane Asa Shri Guru Charana Vagya Shri Guru Charana Rati Aise Utamagati Ye prasade pure sava asa Chakshudan dilaje janme janme Prabhu se Chakshudan dilaje janme janme Prabhu se Ye gyani de prakasito Divya Gyani de Prakasito Prema bhakti jaha hoite avidya vinasajate. Prema bhakti jaha hoite avidya vinasajate. Vedigaya janaracharito. Vedigaya janaracharito. Shiguru karuna sindhu adana janara bandhu. Shiguru karuna sindhu adana janara bandhu. O cannot look at Jivana. O cannot look at Jivana. Aha Prabhu Kora Doya Deha Mori Padachaya. Haha Prabhu Kora Doya Deha Mori Padachaya. Haha Prabhu Kora Doya Deha Mori Padachaya. Ebe Asku Shakti Bhuvana. Ebbeya Sagusaki Bhuvana. Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare, Hare. Bolo Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Haribo, Haribo, Gora Haribo, Nitai Gora Haribo, Nitai Gora Haribo, Haribo, Gora Haribo, Nitai Gora Haribo. Tagore Premanandi ki jai. Jai Om Vishnupad Paramahansa Pararajika Chasta Tarasatarashi Shishimari's Divine Grace A.C. Bhaktivedanta Goswami Maharaj Srila Prabhupada ki jai. Anantakoti Vaishnava Vrinda ki jai. Namacharya Srila Haridasa Thakur ki jai. Prem Shakaho Sri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Sri Advaita Gadadhar Shivasadi Gaur Bhaktivinoda ki jai. Shri Radha Krishna Gopinath Sam Kunda Radha Kunda Giri Govardhana ki jai. Shri Vrindavan Dham ki jai. Shri Mayapura Dham ki jai. Shri Jagannath Puri Dham ki jai. Tulasi Devi ki jai. Bhakti Devi ki jai. Ganga Maya ki jai. Chamuna Maya ki jai. Samaveda Bhakti ki jai. Nitai Gaura Premanandi. All glories to the assembled devotees. All glories to the assembled. All glories to the assembled. All glories to Shri Guru, Shri Guranga, all glory to Srila Prabhupada, Patita Pavani Ki Jai. Nama Om Vishnu Padaya, Krishna Prestaya Bhutali, Srimati Bhaktivedanta Swami Nitanamani. Namaste Saraswati Devi, Guruvani Pacharini, Nirvisesa Sunyavadi, Paskati Lazatani, Srila Prabhupada Ki Jai. Nama Om Vishnu Padaya, Krishna Prestaya The Lotus Feet of our spiritual master, the only way by which we can attain the pure devotion service. I bow down to his feet with great awe and reverence. By his grace, one can cross the ocean of material suffering and obtain the mercy of Krishna. My only wish to have my consciousness purified by the words emanating from his lotus mouth. Attachment to his lotus feet is perfection, fulfills all desires. He opens my darkened eyes and fills my heart with transcendental knowledge. He is my Lord, birth after birth. From him, ecstatic prema emanates. By him, ignorance is destroyed. The Vedic scriptures sing his character. Our spiritual master is the ocean of mercy, friend of the poor and Lord and master of devotees. O Master, be merciful unto us. Give us the shade of your lotus feet, your famous spread throughout all the three worlds. We take shelter of your lotus feet. Srila Prabhupada Ki Jai. Nama Om Vishnu Padaya Krishna.